Shut up and sit down. Welcome to True Crime Groove. I'm your host, Maze, and with me as always is the Pineapple Queen. How are you doing?
How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. Did you have a nice holiday?
Yes, very good holiday. Lots of busy stuff going on for New Year's and Christmas, but it was very nice.
Good. I hope everyone out there had a really happy holidays. I also wanted to quickly thank everyone everyone that listened to our last podcast, our first podcast. We really appreciated it. You know who you are, and thank you for listening. I wanted to get into why I picked this case. I had another case in mind. Excuse me. I had another case in mind that I was going to do for this podcast, and I got into looking into that case, and I was kind of just looking around on the internet at cases, and just things were popping up in my thing, and I came across this case, and I started to read this case, and I couldn't stop reading about this case. You think of your most heinous crimes committed by people. You think of maybe a Jeffrey Dahmer or a John Wayne Gacy or something like that. I couldn't understand why I had never heard of this case. Had you ever heard of this case?
I had not, and I was actually really surprised, as well as you were, with that. I had even talked to some people who had lived further down south, where maybe it would have been more news coverage, because this happened in Tennessee, and we live in Columbus, and they hadn't heard of it either, and they lived in Alabama in 2007 when this had happened. So
yeah, the only thing I could find on it that was mainstream, so to speak, was an Oxygen show that Nancy Grace hosts called Injustice with Nancy Grace, and that's where I read that article, and that's the only like major network. You know, you have ID Channel, you have Dateline, you have 48 Hours, you have 2020, you have all these shows, and I hadn't seen any of them do this case, but she did.
Yeah, I was going to also say, I think when I did look into that, because I was wondering that myself, I did find that when it happened, CNN and Fox both did one story on this case, and that was it. They covered it once.
Okay. All right. That's from everything that I saw, that sounds about right to me as well. So imagine you're a young couple, which you are. Yeah. You have a young husband and you're newly wed. Mm-hmm. Imagine you're a young couple and you're living your life, your everyday life, and you have plans to go to dinner and then to a party after, and then your life is just completely destroyed the moment you step out of your apartment building to go to your car. That's basically what this story is. It's the story of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom Jr. And this is True Crime Groove. Let's get our groove on and talk some true crime. Listener discretion is advised. Disturbing content ahead. This is your warning.
Okay, so Channon Christian was born April 29th, 1986. She was 21 years old. She was in school at University, Tennessee. She moved to Tennessee in 1997. Her parents described her as a very beautiful woman with long brown hair. She had the most beautiful smile, and she had a very loving heart. Her and Christopher Newsom met in 2006, where they started to date. Christopher was born on September 21st, 1983. He was 23 years old. He loved to play baseball, and he was a carpenter. Christopher also loved to ride motorcycles. He finally went out and bought himself one, and 2 weeks before this happened, he went and sold his motorcycle. And his mother asked him, well, why would you go out and do that? And he replied, because I want a life.
Which is extremely sad. Our story starts in Knoxville, Tennessee. Knoxville, Tennessee is the home of the University of Tennessee. It's a college town. It's kind of like Columbus in that regard. It's a little smaller of a city. Channon had gone to a friend's house, or a friend was at her house. I can't remember exactly.
I believe they went to a friend's house.
Apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And she was getting ready for the party. She was waiting on Chris to arrive to pick her up, to take her to dinner,
Mm-hmm.
and then to a party that they had planned with friends. They came out of their apartment and were immediately assaulted right in front of their car, or at Shannon's SUV. They were attacked by 3 individuals, I believe it was, in the parking lot, or was it just 2 there?
To be honest,
So there's a total of 5 people that were involved in this crime, but it was all at different times. So I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, but they were attacked at gunpoint. They were carjacked in the parking lot of these apartments by a couple of these people, maybe 3 of them. Not sure. I can't quite remember if it was 2 or 3 at the apartment.
There was at least 2
Yeah,
because
there was at least 2.
They both had guns to their head
Right.
as soon as they got into the car.
They immediately had guns to their head. They were driven to
Chipman Street on a
right.
house there that was abandoned, that these assailants were staying.
Right. That these people were living in this abandoned house on Chipman Street. They were taken there. Channon was taken into the bedroom, into one of the back bedrooms.
So she was actually taken inside, but Christopher was not.
Right.
Because what we're thinking is one of the 5 people that are involved in this took Christopher to a different location because his body was found somewhere else.
Right.
So.
She was taken into a back bedroom where she was tied up, and then another guy took Christopher out to a field by some railroad track.
So initially they stripped Christopher down, all the way down to his shoes. They took his shoes.
Yes, I believe they put a dog collar on him and took a dog leash and connected it to the dog collar, and that's basically how they walked him out to the railroad tracks. And they put like a blindfold over his eyes.
He was found basically naked from the waist down, and he had walked for some time because by the looks of his feet, they were pretty broken with cuts and stuff like that. He was found with a gunshot to the back, the neck, and to the back of the head. And
he had been raped as well. He had been raped by a person. He had been raped by an object as well. They wrapped him in a blanket, a comforter or something, and then they set his body on fire. So he was raped, he was shot, he was set ablaze, and he was shown the most mercy in this case.
Out of the two of them.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I was going to say, from what I read with the medical examiner, was that his cause of death was the gunshot to the head. She did say that where the bullet hit him in the back, it did paralyze his legs. So he would not have even been able to, if they would have left him that way, he wouldn't have even been able to move. They did say that they found semen in his anus.
That's right. It was not usable
right,
because of the fire. Right. So they couldn't use this, but they did find it. So they know that he was sexually assaulted.
Right.
And the medical examiner obviously
said that there was something
from experience had figured out that he was raped with
another object,
something else, sodomized. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So that was. Do you remember who was Boyd who took him?
I believe later on with the trials, they do go in to say that Latavius and Lamarcus and George all come back and say that they had nothing to do with Christopher's death or the rape, and they pinned it all on Eric Boyd. But there is some talk about how he took the car, and they do not know where he was, but he was gone for several hours. And when he had came back, that was...
So this leads us back to what happened on Chipman Street.
Yes, what initially with
and
Channon.
And what happened to Channon.
Yes.
Channon was taken into the house. She was put in a back bedroom. She was tied up back there. She was tortured, raped in every way conceivable. So that's anally, vaginally, orally. She was found with bruises all over her body. She was found with carpet burns
on her back,
on a lot of her body. She had been raped, as I said, with by somebody in all of her orifices, but she had also been raped with objects, just like Chris. She had been raped with some other instrument. They had poured bleach down her throat. They had scrubbed her vaginal area with bleach and some kind of brush, scrub brush or something.
From what I read with the medical examiner, she had described the oral rape to be so violent that it resulted in cuts on her lips, and that there was semen all down her shirt and her jeans. So why they used bleach, it was just another form of torture because the DNA was all over her.
Right, and these people were so stupid. Like you said, they tried to get rid of the evidence with bleach, but the DNA was everywhere. They had the DNA everywhere. This crime was committed by imbeciles, complete idiots, and we're going to go into that a little bit later. But
And you would have to be this stupid to do something this horrific.
Absolutely. They hogtied her. They put her into some trash bags, and they placed her into a trash can in their kitchen because they're geniuses. They so okay, so the friends at the party that they were supposed to attend, they started getting worried about the couple. So they went to the apartment. They saw Chris's vehicle there. They started getting concerned, and somehow they pinged her cell phone.
So Shannon called her mom right before they left the friend's house, and they were taken. And of course, when the friends got worried, Dina and Gary Christian were very concerned as well because she never came home. Shannon and Christopher both lived with their parents, and Christopher being 23, it wasn't unusual for him not to have come home. But Shannon would always call. She'd always, keep her parents up to date on what was going on. And like I said, she never came home. And one of the things that Shannon's mom did say was when they found the car, if they just would have went door to door, it could have been possible that she would have been found alive. But
well, right, because she died of asphyxiation. She died from being put in those trash bags.
Right, and she was in that trash can for 2 days before anybody had found her. So when they did find the car, you never know.
And so we'll get into the car a little bit, because here's where my earlier statement that these criminals were complete and total idiots. Mm-hmm. They made almost no attempt to get away with this crime. They left their DNA, they left their fingerprints, they left all kinds of evidence for the police to
trace back to them.
Right. It was these people. It was inevitable that they were going to get caught for this. That it was like just completely ridiculous. The level of incompetence of these criminals. Do you know the pain and gain? Have you ever heard of the pain and gain story? It was some criminal activity that was committed in Florida. They kidnapped a gym owner and basically were bumbling idiots when they tried to commit this. They were trying to steal this guy's money and use him as the catalyst to steal the money, and they just completely were just bumbling idiots and got caught. This is like a level above that. Yeah. That's how stupid these people were.
Yeah, they really were. I mean, it was like they did all these awful, awful, I can't say it again, awful things to these people. And it's like, on top of that, they had to go and take their lives as well. It wasn't just,
Right. They took their lives, they tortured them, they humiliated them.
Right.
And made basically no effort to even
try and cover it up.
Yeah, try and get away with it.
And the things that they did try to do to cover it up just was made it worse for the victims.
Right, it was just additional torture.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk exactly about how these people got caught. Chris's body was discovered the next day on the 7th by a railroad worker, and so it was called in. So the police responded to that scene and started processing that scene. The friends and family of Channon, they got concerned that night actually, and started looking for her They eventually found her car, and it was abandoned, close to where Chris was, but not too close to where it would like be obvious that there was another body there. But so the cops were called, and they came to the scene to process the car. The seat had been pushed back all the way, which Channon was not a very tall
person.
lady, so that was odd. There were cigarettes in the car.
And she did smoke.
Neither one of them smoked. They found fingerprints in the car that wasn't Shannon's. They ran the fingerprints through the fingerprint
database,
and it came back to one of the suspects, Lamarcus Davidson, and his address was listed as whatever that address was you gave me earlier, on Chipman Street.
Chipman Street, yeah.
And so, which was like walking distance, like a couple football fields maybe away from where they found the car.
Oh, I thought that car was like 4 houses down.
Yeah, something like that. That's a couple. What is that? That's a couple football fields.
No.
So they went to the house on Chipman Street. They got a search warrant to go inside, and they found her body, her lifeless body, in a trash can in their kitchen. So there was some. They picked up Davidson. He was arrested. I believe Boyd was arrested there in Knoxville. Eric Boyd. There was a woman that was involved in this. Her name was Vanessa Coleman. She was arrested in Knoxville. Because basically they all started singing like birds once they were caught.
Right, yeah.
They all tried to minimize their role in the crime, but they basically admitted, oh yeah, we did it, but I was just, watching. I didn't do any of it. It was Latavius, or it was this other guy, George Thomas, or it was this other guy, Latavlis Cobbins, who's the fifth person that's involved in this. So you have these 5 people. You have Latavius Cobbins,
yeah.
Lamarcus Davidson, Vanessa Coleman, George Thomas, and Eric Boyd. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So they had to arrest one of them. Do you remember which one that was that they had to arrest? He fled. He had left for like Virginia or something.
That was Marcus Davison.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right. It was Lamarcus Davidson. He had fled to Kentucky, I believe, and I think it was Eric Boyd had. Once he had been arrested, he helped them find Davidson, and when they got to Kentucky and served the warrant or whatever it was, when they picked him up, he was wearing Chris's shoes. Were they Air Jordans or something?
I think they were Nikes.
He was wearing his Nikes and had a .22 caliber pistol on him. So eventually these, like I said before, these master criminals got caught. When they processed her body, they found semen in her mouth, DNA in her vagina, DNA in her anus, and it was different DNAs in all 3. Mm-hmm. There was Davidson's fingerprints on the trash bags that she was wrapped in. They found her belongings, his belongings in the house. These were obvious things that I can't remember exactly what they found, but like it was like purses and wallets. It was like things that were, there's no way they weren't theirs. They knew they were theirs. Mm-hmm. So like I said before, I've said this a couple times, but this didn't take Sherlock Holmes to solve this case. It was pretty abundantly clear who had committed the crime. They just had to kind of figure out with stories from them and whatnot, kind of who did what to who. But in my opinion, it didn't. To me, it doesn't matter. I think they're all guilty, and they probably should have all gotten the same sentence.
Yeah.
For the crime. That didn't happen, however, in this case. That obviously you get lawyers involved, and they start, doing their lawyer thing, and this charge gets changed to that charge, and this charge gets moved over to this charge, and so.
Yeah.
But the first person to go on trial was Eric Boyd. He was convicted on April 16th of 2008. He was found guilty of carjacking with intent to commit bodily harm. He received 18 years in prison, and that's going to be a repetitive theme throughout these verdicts. There's not going to be much mystery about the outcome of these trials. The next one was I cannot say that name. Latavis Cobbins. He was found guilty on August 25th of 2009. He was acquitted of the rape charge. He was not found guilty of rape, but he did receive life without the possibility of parole. On October 28th of 2009, Lamarcus Davidson was found guilty of murder and rape. I believe he was found guilty on all charges, and he received the death penalty.
George Thomas was found guilty on December 8th, 2009. He got life without parole, and he was found guilty on all 46 charges. And Vanessa Coleman, she was found guilty on 40 charges on May 13th, 2010. She received 53 years.
So, case closed, right?
Wrong.
Case open. So, in what can only be described as probably a nightmare for the families of these kids.
They have to go through it all over again.
Well, not quite, but on December 1st of 2011, the judge that had presided in at least 4 of the trials, maybe all 5, he comes out and says he has an opioid addiction. And so what that means is his cases are subject to be compromised. So there's some appeals put in. Well, they all put appeals in. They all said, "Hey, I want a new trial because this judge is a dope fiend and he didn't run my trial right." 2 of them were denied. I believe that was Lamarcus Davidson was denied, and
Latavis
Cobbins.
Which they both were half brothers. Okay. I don't think we mentioned that, but they were related, just different fathers.
So let's just say this: they all appealed their convictions. They all petitioned for new trials. I'm not going to go through every detail of what that entailed because it's long and complicated, but basically it went to the Tennessee State Supreme Court. Cobbins and Davidson were denied new trials. The other 3 were given new trials by a different judge. A Judge Blackwood, I think. And so the first to go on retrial was Coleman, the woman. That was on November 20th, 2012. She was retried. The state wanted to give her 50 years. Her lawyer wanted 20. She was found guilty again. She was sentenced to 35 years, but she was given some credit for time already served, and so it was reduced to 25 years.
I do want to mention with Vanessa Coleman, her getting this lesser sentence, like May said earlier, she was just as involved as everybody else. She tried to say that she was being held against her will, which is why I think they went with the 35 years. But that was the narrative there.
Well,
but they did find journal entries.
Yeah, she was writing a journal, and I just want to read. I'm going to read a passage from that journal. This is something she wrote while staying at this house that they killed Channon in. Last night was one of a kind. We stayed with a crackhead that is cool as hell. It snowed a little bit, but it's already melted. Let's talk about adventures. I had one hell of an adventure since I've been in Big TN. It's a crazy world these days, but I love the fun, adventure, and lessons that I've learned. It's going to be a long, interesting year. And this was written just after the murder of Channon.
Right. And so her whole narrative that she was being held against her allowed store. And any of that, and she went by herself. She could have left and said something to somebody, but she didn't. So to me, she's just as crappy as the rest of these people.
I give her no quarter for her behavior. She's just as guilty in my opinion, but whatever.
And almost even worse. I mean, you are a female and you are watching this happen to another female.
Yeah, that's.
I don't know how you can do that.
I can't even speak to that. That I don't even know what that would feel like for a woman to realize that another woman is watching her being raped and not doing anything.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Just awful. Anyway, so in May of 2013, George Thomas gets retried. He also has his sentence reduced a little bit. I believe he said because they got him to flip on, because the person that got the raw end of the deal on this, if you will, but in my opinion, I'm glad he did, is Boyd, Eric Boyd. But
yeah.
So Thomas is found guilty on 38 counts. He was sentenced originally to life in prison,
right?
Without
parole.
Without parole.
Yeah.
So he was resentenced to life in prison, but with the possibility of parole after 51 years. So the next trial is Boyd, Eric Boyd.
So on August 13th, 2019, Eric Boyd was found guilty on premeditated first-degree murder and rape against both of the victims. See, because they weren't able to get the DNA evidence off of Christopher, essentially, and Channon, so they needed the testimony from George Thomas in order to convict him on those charges. So with that testimony, that gave Eric Boyd life in prison with no possibility of parole. And he was tried by Judge Bob McKee.
So despite this horrific crime, the families have done the best they can to memorialize their kids. The Shannon Gale Christian Foundation and the Shannon Gale Christian Memorial Golf Tournament were established in her memory. It provides a scholarship for a person at the high school that she went to go to college where she went, the University of Tennessee. So it basically gives a senior at her high school a scholarship to UT. A foundation was also established for Christopher Newsom. They hold an annual memorial baseball tournament at Halls Community Park. A memorial scholarship is given annually in his name to a graduating a senior at Halls High School. I guess they give it to a baseball player, one of the baseball players.
Also, there is a company called Waste Connections of Tennessee. The company stood right next to this house on 2316 Chipman Street. They demolished that house, and in 2008 put up a memorial of a cross in their honor. And I believe both the Christian family and the Newsom family were grateful to see that house be demolished.
I hope we've kind of shown why I picked this case, why I found it so interesting, and the biggest thing was I'd never heard of this case until I just happened to stumble across it, and that's weird. To have a case like this and not even, I had never even heard of it. I just couldn't. I couldn't pass it up. I had to tell it. I had to get it out there because more people should know about this story.
Yeah, I believe you had to tell me to look up the case, and I had to look it up as couple tortured in Tennessee. I was just kind of surprised that like this case didn't have like a name like the Pain and Game or the Central Park Five. Like this was just that amazed me. And then I go in to actually read this case, and it made me physically sick to my stomach. Like I had to give myself breaks because I thought I was going to get sick. It was just the things that they did to these people was just horrific. And sometimes you forget that things like this happen in the world, like, and can happen, So
Absolutely, it was a horrific case, and but we had to tell it. It was one that we had to tell, just because, like I said, nobody had heard of it. We had to get it out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank you all for listening. We really appreciate the support. Don't forget to follow us on our platforms. We have a Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. They're all at True Crime Groove. Thanks again for listening, and peace, love, and stay groovy.